Hello and welcome back to the Frogs of War podcast. I'm Anthony North. That's Russ Hodges. We're going to talk you through the week in TCU sports. Another big week of news for TCU. Wimbledon's gotten started, and there's some Horned Frogs playing out there at the All England Club in London. NBA Summer League's underway, and the new Horned Frogs in the NBA are getting their first action. Some football news has started as Media Day kicks off next week, as well as some other stuff around baseball and around all of college sports. Before we get into it, though, Russ, how are you doing tonight?
Feeling good. A lot of Fourth of July celebrations, a lot of fireworks here in Rochelle recently. I actually played a little bit of golf with my dad. Um, we had fun. Didn't score very well, unfortunately, but we had fun. It was a great day. 80 degrees and sunny, can't complain. Had a few drinks on the course, enjoyed the Fourth of July holiday. So, um, how was your Fourth? How are things going with you and your family?
Yeah, things are great. We had a nice get together here in the neighborhood. The neighborhood out here does a fireworks show, actually really good professional fireworks show. It was on the weekend, and then the city does their big fireworks show on the 4th of July. So luckily this year the city didn't burn down completely. I think last year it was, all of like West and Northwest Fort Worth, like completely, they were like, please do not set off fireworks. We can't do any fireworks shows. It's very dry. It's still dry here, but at least this year, I think it was contained. So everybody had a really good time, ate too many hot dogs and hamburgers and all that, but a great time. And it's nice to have a little day off in the middle of the week as well.
Yeah, I'm glad to see. I think were they able to get the hot dog eating contest, the Nathan's hot dog
They
eating
got
contest?
it.
Were they
Yeah.
able to do that? There was some rumblings that they
It's
they
too
canceled
dangerous
it.
to eat hot dogs when it's raining outside. So yeah, but they did end up getting it in, and old boy Joey Chestnut
The goat.
came away
Yep.
with the victory once again. So congratulations to him. That's not my thing. I can't really watch that. I don't know. There's something, my stomach can't handle it. It's like too gross for me to watch them down those. It's I don't know. I couldn't imagine eating more than like 4 or 5 hot dogs in like an hour, much less 60 plus in like 3 minutes. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
they're built different out there, that's for sure. I think I saw that the amount of hot dogs that they eat in one sitting is equal to, it's got to be 10,000 calories, maybe
I think
maybe
it's like
more than that.
18,000. I saw.
I
Yeah, I
don't know
saw the
how the
graphic
human
on it. Yeah.
body, how they prep
Mm-mm.
their stomachs and their bodies do that. I can't imagine.
True elite athletes of our time. Um, Tonight we're also going to get into on the podcast. We put out the Frogs Awards, the awards for the 2022-23 athletic season for TCU. So kudos to Russ for coming up with the Frogs Awards moniker there. Loved it. Very clever. Um, but we put out our Twitter polls a week or so back and got some good feedback. And of course, we'll go through all of that here on tonight's podcast. That's going to be the big piece of what we talk about today. So that'll be fun to go relive the old memories of this last year before we fully turn the page into the 2023-24 season ahead. Before we get into all that, we'll remind everyone that you can visit Charlie Hustle Clothing Company. CharlieHustle.com is a sponsor for the podcast here for the Frogs of War podcast. You can use our promo code Frogs O War, FROGSOWAR at checkout for 15% off your order, anytime, anything that you buy. But there is new TCU merch dropping next week, Monday, July 10th. So be on the lookout. You'll see that coming through all the social feeds and everything. But you may already be seeing some advertisements out there. I've seen them kind of pushing some stuff to TCU people. So excited for that. It's really great stuff. So go check out their website, charliehustle.com, and use code Frogs of War at checkout and get a good deal and sport some new gear for the Frogs. All right, let's jump into the Frogs Awards. Um, And yeah, we'll again preface this by saying the polls were run on Twitter. So we did have a post out on the site where folks could see and go to Twitter if you're not an active Twitter follower. But on Twitter polls, you are limited to 4 selections in each individual poll. So many of these, this is one of the greatest athletic seasons. Probably, I think it's fair to say the greatest athletic season in TCU sports history for the entire existence of the university. This was just a remarkable season all around in just about every sport. So it was very difficult down selecting to the 4 that would get into each of these. So certainly we'll speak through some of the honorable mentions and some of the things that maybe slipped our mind as we were putting these together. And I guess just to get into it, our first poll was the TCU Freshman of the Year. Um, there's so many good freshmen this season. We'll go through the choices that we had. We listed Julie Johannesson of Rifle, who was just simply incredible in this season. All American, perfect scores, broke school records, NCAA records. Um, Truly a remarkable season. Sebastian Gorsny from men's tennis. I think it was a probably a tough choice there between Gorsny or Jack Pennington Jones of which true freshman from the tennis squad would be the selection there. Gorsny really came out swinging right from the gate and was a key piece participating in almost every match right from the jump. Anthony Silva, the shortstop for the baseball team, came in and exploded all of his high expectations to help lead the Frogs to the College World Series semifinal. And then Dominic Williams, the defensive tackle for the football team, eating up offensive linemen up front. And, of course, famously getting his freshman season started at age 17, earning a sack in that season opener against Colorado. So, Russ, of these 4, what was your thought on who should have won, and let us know the results of how the poll shook out?
Yeah, I think in this poll and really in nearly all of the polls that we did, I wasn't too surprised by the final result. I think Anthony Silva was absolutely deserving of winning and wound up with just under 62% of the total vote. Dominic Williams came in second at 21.6%, and then Julie Johannesson in third at 12.8%. So, like you said, all of these freshmen had tremendous seasons in their own right. And, with all of these polls, we tried to spread the love and get as many different athletes involved from as many different sports as possible because like Anthony said, this was a uh, just an unbelievable year for TCU sports all around, and we wanted to try and highlight as many of the programs and the athletes from those programs as we could. But Anthony Silva, we talked about it on the podcast not too long ago with baseball season just coming to a close here a little while ago that I think he's the next superstar for TCU baseball. I mean, he showed it this year. We've talked about it so many times that we knew coming in he was going to be an elite defender. And the offense, what he was able to do at the plate was a huge surprise, I think, for many TCU baseball fans. And to hit 330, 50 RBIs, came up with several big hits throughout the postseason. He is going to be a big time player to watch out for next year. And I know he came in this year with a lot of hype, being a preseason Big 12 Freshman of the Year. Delivered on those expectations, I think, and is going to be a player that potentially makes the All Big 12 first team next year. I think he's that good. So, not too surprised with these results. Was happy to see Julie Johannesson get about 13% of the vote. The rifle team is arguably the best in the country year in and year out. I know it doesn't get reported on or talked about very much. And Julie Johannesson shot multiple perfect 600 scores, which is incredibly rare in the sport. So happy to see her get a fair share there. And obviously a just a horrible tragedy with what happened to her and how the program will need to move forward without her. But um, yeah, ultimately this poll, Anthony Silva kind of running away with it. Um, Definitely deserved. He would get my vote, and I'm not surprised that he won.
Yeah, this might be the one where there is a football player or event listed that did not come away with the win. I think, it's going to be very hard to overcome some of the moments and the players from that run to the national championship game in football. Obviously, it runs the show everywhere nationally, and so yeah, big ups to Anthony Silva. It helps that it was the most recent, and he really put on quite a show in the College World Series. He came through with some clutch hits, some absolutely incredible plays in the field at shortstop, and some of those kind of plays that you rarely ever see at any level of baseball. So yeah, it definitely well deserved. I think my vote actually, I voted for Sebastian Gorsny just because I'm probably following tennis too much,
Hmm.
but um, I just really thought he was incredibly impressive this season, stepping in and I think he only dropped maybe two matches all season, and was the clincher throughout much of TCU's run through the Big 12 tournament title and into the national semifinals. So, um, all right, we'll move it on to the next. The next poll question was TCU newcomer of the year, which is slightly different than freshman of the year in that these are the inbound transfers who came right in from outside of Fort Worth and came in and made a big impact right away to their respective programs. So we've got football's defensive back Josh Newton, also football's linebacker Johnny Hodges, volleyball's Callie Williams, and baseball's Cole Fontenelle. This one, the voting was
A nail
incredibly
biter.
close. Basically, a
Hmm.
three-way split here. Poor Callie Williams only got 1.5%. I think that's unfortunate.
Too many of y'all are sleeping on the indoor volleyball team. I'm telling you,
Absolutely
coming back this
sleeping
year.
and and yeah, indoor volleyball had a bit of a resurgence and looking for even more next season, as TCU did advance to the second round of the NCAA tournament and had a big bounce back season, and she was certainly a huge part of it following her dad, the new head coach there, Jason Williams, up from Baylor. But just by the slimmest of margins, Josh Newton comes away with the victory here, and it's interesting because Johnny Hodges was actually voted the defensive newcomer of the year in the Big 12, um, leading TCU in tackles and kind of both of these guys came in and were vocal leaders and were great on the mic, providing wonderful sound bites and clips for the media um, and so I think it was going to be an interesting case, I guess. Russ, what do you think kind of pushed over the edge Josh Newton past his teammate and then also past first baseman Cole Fontenelle?
Yeah, I think Josh Newton has a tremendous amount of hype coming into this season. Not that people aren't talking about Johnny Hodges because he's a returning starter. I think he's going to contribute and produce at a high level. Josh Newton is someone that may be a first round pick in next year's draft if he can come back from the season that he had with TCU in 2022 and put up the kind of production and play at the level that we saw from him last year. I think it's going to be really fun to watch him because he's going to be moving over to that number one corner spot. You know, he played alongside Travius Hodges Tomlinson last year, a Thorpe Award winner. Now he's going to have an opportunity to step into that role and be a vocal leader, like you said, and possibly give TCU three Thorpe trophies in 4 years, which would be really awesome to see. But I think Josh Newton we saw from the very beginning of the season when the ESPN Plus series came out on TCU football. What was it? Funky Town? What's the docu series called?
The Carter
I don't know.
boys.
The Carter boys, yeah. One of the first episodes was Josh Newton talking to the team and talking about how he came in from a program that I don't even know if they won. They might have won one game, one or two games in his last season there before he came over to TCU, and you could just tell that he is a player that inspires others. And I think that reputation that he's built in a short time at TCU has uh, garnered a lot of love from the fans. So I think that was reflected. Not that his play, I mean, he was absolutely deserving of just based off his play, but I think the way that he's built his reputation as being kind of a heart and soul type player for the defense may be why he was ultimately able to come away with it by 0.6%. Josh Newton had 36.1%, Cole Fontenelle 35.5%, and Johnny Hodges 26.8. I will say this about Cole Fontenelle. We look at TCU baseball season and where things really started to turn around after that. We've talked about the dreadful month of April so many times and how TCU was able to turn the season around in May and make the run that it made. TCU is not making that run without Cole Fontenelle. And there are multiple guys that you can point to and say, this player stepped up, that player stepped up, but you go all the way back to early March, late February when the season is just starting out. Cole Fontenelle is not even really a regular player at this point in the season. He had to really step in and earn his starting spot and earn that starting first base position because it was David Bishop that was the starter at first base. And when he was struggling and Cole Fontenelle was starting to swing the bat really well, he won that starting job over and just got on an absolute heater over the end of the season. So um, I would have been happy really with either of those three guys, Josh Newton, Cole Fontenelle, Johnny Hodges. Honestly, I would be tempted to vote Cole Fontenelle just because of baseball being on the brain during the spring season and just what he was able to give to the team. But Josh Newton very deserving at the end of the day as well.
All right, next up, we've got the most improved frog. So, who took the biggest step forward in their performance for TCU from season to season? So, candidates here were Jacoby Coles from the basketball team. Really increased his minutes, had to step up as injuries and departures from the team kind of hit midseason towards the end of the season. And obviously, we'll get to it later, but had one of the moments of the season as well in winning the March Madness contest there in the first round. Second up was Dylan Horton, who the defensive lineman for the football team, obviously was ended up getting drafted and turned into the big pass rush threat. Stepped up in the biggest games. He really took it to Michigan and to Texas. Really just put on big performances through the season. Zoe Hall from the volleyball team. Russ, I'm going to have to let you talk that one. It's my blind spot. I need to dive in on indoor volleyball. I just don't know enough. But looking at her statistics, had a big leap in stats season to season. And then last on our candidates was Griffin Kell, the kicker. Again, we will speak to his moment later on, but took another big step forward in his field goal percentage and became really a relied on key piece of what TCU football did this season.
Yeah, well, Zoe Hall, first off, happy to see over 3% for Zoe Hall in this poll. I think Callie Williams had about 1.5%. So a little more love for uh, the TCU volleyball team in this poll. But Zoe Hall is a player that uh, freshman season missed some time with an injury, and so was limited in that regard, but came back as a sophomore and had a healthy season and was a big contributor for TCU on the outside. Was one of the team's leaders in kills this year and is going to be a player coming back for a third season this coming fall with a chance to really take the lead on the outside and be a leading scorer for the team. So there's your volleyball bit there. I might have to be
Thank you.
the resident. You're the resident men's tennis fan in
There
our
you go.
chat, and I think I might have to be the resident volleyball fan for us. But just looking at this poll, Jacoby Coles, again, not too surprised with the outcome of this one, 40.4%. And uh, it's you look at where Jacoby Coles was last year, a player that was basically a fringe rotation player. He was kind of like I think he was really like the ninth man, in the rotation, kind of in and out. Didn't shoot the ball particularly well, wasn't on the floor a whole lot, I think, because of that. But this past season, he was an entirely different player. Just seemed to play with more confidence, showed a lot better fundamentals, good footwork, was a reliable scorer when he needed to be, the best free throw shooter on the team. And there were stretches this past season where we talked about TCU struggling from the free throw line and who could you count on to knock those free throws down at the end of the game. You would think normally it's your starting point guard or your starting two guard, whoever your lead scorer is. It was Jacoby Coles coming off the bench shooting over 80% from the free throw line, knocking down, big shots at the end of a game when the Frogs needed it most. So um, Jacoby Coles is someone I think is going to step in next year and potentially earn a starting spot if he can continue to shoot the ball as well as he has over the last 12 months. And then looking at some of these other guys, Griffin Kell only missed a couple of kicks this past year, and we know that in college football, kickers and punters, it could be kind of a crapshoot. And I think TCU has been very blessed to have Griffin Kell as a part of the program and to have him coming back for a fifth season when he could just graduate and move on. He's going to be a huge part of what TCU does in 2023. So looking forward to seeing some big things from Griffin Kell this year.
Yeah, and the one that we left off the list here that heard some feedback and is definitely warranted is Max Duggan. Why was
Hmm.
Max Duggan not on the list of most improved frogs? And I think that is totally fair and is probably the correct answer if he's included on this list. Um, there's no question that he stepped up into a different stratosphere, which brings us to the next question on the list of most valuable frog. So Max Duggan is the first on the list. He's the first on
A
everyone's
runaway
list.
winner, not even
Uh,
remotely close.
it's yeah, he took home 85.5% of the vote, and yeah, it's Max Duggan. He had one of the most magical, incredible seasons of any TCU athlete ever, um, bringing home awards, all the quarterback awards. He takes home the Davy O'Brien. He's the Earl Campbell Texas Rose Award. He's the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. He's the Heisman Trophy runner up, second team All American, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, and you know, for him to go from what he was, not just what he was in previous seasons during the Gary Patterson era, but to go from not being named the starter for game one and having to and remaining with the team and continuing to be a team leader and coming in off the bench in that Colorado game, leading the team to that victory and a whole bunch more victories, including a college football playoff semifinal win. Yeah, I mean, there may be a statue of him in front of Amon G. Carter someday. Yes, he's the most valuable frog this season. We probably could have made this question most valuable frog not named Max Duggan and then gotten a more interesting vote. But we'll go through the other candidates here because these are also people who are all-time greats for TCU at their sports. So Mike Miles Jr., obviously from TCU basketball, is 3-year starter and leads this team to two straight NCAA tournaments. NCAA tournament victories. If he doesn't get injured this season, he's probably a first team All Big 12. He ends up still a second team All Big 12, even though he misses a handful of games. The leading scorer and really the thing that the engine that made everything happen for a TCU basketball program that during his time on campus has reached heights that it had never found before. Then we've got Braden Taylor, the third baseman for the baseball team, another all-world guy here, likely first-round draft pick coming up next week. First team All-Big 12, an All-American, Big 12 tournament MVP, all-time leading home run hitter in TCU history, led the team to the College World Series semifinal. An incredible career and an incredible season for Taylor. And then TCU soccer's Messiah Bright, the all-time leading scorer, and the most points, the most goals in TCU history. She was a second-team All-American, reached the Sweet 16 again, a soccer program that has been extremely strong while she's been here in Fort Worth. And she goes and gets drafted by the Orlando Pride and is out there doing her thing in the NWSL now in professional soccer. So Max Duggan, clear winner, but three truly all-time great Horned Frogs join him on the voting rolls here.
Yeah, part of me wonders, looking at the way this question is phrased, if it was TCU most valuable player / most valuable athlete, maybe it might be a little bit closer. Maybe it's because most valuable frog. I feel like Max Duggan, he embodies so much of what it means to be a TCU athlete and what it means to be a Horned Frog. And I feel like his story, the improvement in the performance on the field was undeniable, but the way that he speaks to people and the way he conducts himself off the field, I feel like that's what it means to be a frog. That's why I feel like he ran away with this almost 86%. He is a Horned Frog. Not that Braden Taylor and Messiah Bright and Mike Miles Jr. aren't, but just Max and his story and what he's had to go through to overcome the obstacles with his health and his performance on the field to cap off his career the way that he was able to. It's very much a storybook ending to his TCU career. So I thought this was going to be a little bit closer, but I think that just shows how passionate, TCU football fans are and how much the fan base loves Max Duggan, and it's well-deserved love. So
yeah, my favorite honorable mention that considered including on this voting list was Hypnotoad. I think Hypnotoad had an incredible run for TCU this season. I think that is certainly up for most valuable frog. It really brought the fan base together, and some of these games really turned on that moment when Hypnotoad would show up. So I think we got to give a little bit of consideration for the role that Hypnotoad played for TCU, and just kind of joking aside, it was one of those like bringing the fun back to just being a TCU fan. I think for the last few years, it felt a little bit like overly businesslike, and it was good to be reminded that this is college football and college sports, and that it's fun, and that we're in this community together, and we're all, yes, we all want to win, and winning is fun, but all this silly, you can win and also do fun, silly stuff like all the Hypnotoad and Sonny Dykes wearing the Hypnotoad hoodie, and kind of the internet shattering at that moment, and we all get bombarded with the bot links to buy this hoodie. So anyway, the Hypnotoad was super fun, and I had to get that honorable mention in here.
yeah, we should have had a poll of Super Frog versus Hypnotoad versus, I think isn't there a little Super Frog now as well? There's a little mascot I think that I've seen
Yeah,
running
all the
around at
different Super
times.
Frogs would be fun. Yeah. All right, so we can move on to the next question, which was TCU Coach of the Year, and in a very similar, actually the exact same number percentage, Sonny Dykes runs away with it here, again showing that the kind of domination of what football means to the fans here. But to go through it again, 4 incredible seasons by 4 incredible coaches, and we probably could have listed every coach on
There are
TCU's
multiple
campus. I
honorable
mean,
mentions for this
yeah,
category.
yeah. The honorable mention list is pretty much the entire coach's role at TCU. So, um, yeah, apologies to Eric Bell and Jamie Dixon, and yeah,
Hmm.
on and on and on. But what we listed, certainly Sonny Dykes was the winner with 85.5% again, and National Coach of the Year, and in his first season brings the team to the national championship game. There's no competing with that. I'm sorry to to everyone else on campus, but that is it's an all-time great achievement. And so congrats to Sonny Dykes for you can add your Frogs Award trophy to your case with all your other National Coach of the Year awards that you took home this year.
Yes,
But yeah,
excellently branded. For all of these winners, your Frogs Award, our little frog emblem with the trophy
holding the
photoshopped in.
trophy.
Your awards are in the mail. No, but looking at this list, I mean, these are all Hector Gutierrez, David Roditi with beach volleyball and men's tennis. These are coaches that took their teams to national championship tournaments. And Kirk Sarloos, 11, just over 11%, taking TCU to the College World Series.
Yeah, all
You,
3 reached national semifinals.
mhm. And you mentioned Eric Bell and Jamie Dixon. I'm going to plug indoor volleyball again,
Of
and
course.
Jason Williams is got to be an honorable mention for the team getting back to the NCAA tournament and having, I think it's winningest season in 6 or 7 years. So TCU men's and women's golf making it to the national championships. Those coaches, Bill Montegel in his last collegiate season before retirement, taking TCU to a national championship. So Elon, we need more Twitter poll options. Don't restrict us to only 4 choices. I know Twitter's got more bandwidth, more data support than that. So give us more options so we're not having to leave all these people out.
I don't know. I think maybe that's the key for the new Instagram threads to become the thing, is more poll voting options. So that's what we need. I don't think, no matter how many options we would have had, Sonny Dykes would have run away with this
Hmm.
year. But yes, all of those other coaches on TCU's campus certainly deserve their praise and recognition for the incredible seasons that they put forward. All right, so next up is a big one, the TCU moment of the year in a season filled with just some of the most incredible moments that that TCU fans have ever experienced. What stands out as the moment of the year? Our candidates: Griffin Kell, Hypnotoad in a hurry. Uh, it's the bazooka on the Brazos. It's taking down the hated rival on the road to keep the undefeated magical season alive. Um, an absolute heart-stopping moment as TCU, with no timeouts, is running Amari DiMarcado into the line of scrimmage as the clock ticks down under 20 seconds, and somehow that play comes off and it works and it's good, and TCU continues its drive into the college football playoff. Um, it's hard to get much sweeter than that. So again, runaway victory for Griffin Kell here. So we'll talk about the other the other candidates though. Trey Richardson's breakout, incredible performance in Fayetteville during the regional tournament over Arkansas with 3 home runs, including 2 grand slams for a total of 11 RBI there in the victory over the Razorbacks. Jacoby Coles hitting a game winner in the final seconds of the opening round match against Arizona State in the NCAA basketball tournament. And then final on the list is Elijah Nunez robbing the home run at Kansas State that uh, seals a series win for TCU and keeps its kind of at the moment, it felt like maybe that was the thing that was guaranteeing it locked up TCU's bid into the NCAA tournament. Certainly TCU would go on to win the Big 12 tournament after that series ended, but at that moment, it felt like a huge moment to be able to come away with that win and move up in place in the Big 12 and kind of make sure Kansas State stayed down in that race and in the race into the NCAA tournament. So all four massive moments, but again, Griffin Kell with 83% of the vote runs away with it.
And I guess we'll call it a super honorable mention because we did have a few of our followers on Twitter reply to this poll in particular and ask about the Quentin Johnston breakaway touchdown reception during the Fiesta Bowl against Michigan. I would agree that that probably should be on this poll. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, we're trying not to overload everything with football and try to spread the love a little bit. And for all the reasons that you just mentioned, Elijah Nunez saving a win on the road in a pivotal Big 12 series. I feel like that was a micro moment in a bigger game that it mattered, I think, a little bit more than people may initially think. Not that we're not saying the Fiesta Bowl isn't anything special, but um, that was an unbelievable play, and there are so many. You could put a poll together of 4 or 5 moments from that game in general and say they
Yes.
might be the most they might be the
Yes.
moments of the year. The D Winters pick
D
six, the
winners.
Bud Clark pick six,
Mm-hmm.
so many other things in that game. But I guess I'd be curious to know, had that Quentin Johnston play been in this poll, do you think that would have beaten Hypnotoad in a hurry? Because I know we talked about it briefly before we started recording. I feel like you still have to give the nod to the Griffin Kell field goal. I just feel that the kind of season that TCU was having, I don't know if we'll see a finish like that ever again. And that might be an over exaggeration, but I feel like when you consider the circumstances, the environment, where both teams were in the season, how high the stakes were, and how things just progressively were getting tougher and tougher and tougher for TCU as the season went on, and the team just continued to defy the odds and prove that they belonged in the college football playoff, and they don't get there. They don't get to the Fiesta Bowl. Quentin Johnston doesn't catch a 70 something
Mm-hmm.
yard touchdown if Griffin Kell doesn't make this kick against Baylor. So I feel like if that would still be my choice. Like I don't know about you, but that would still be my choice if you were to put those two moments together specifically.
100%. I agree with you. The Griffin Gill play is an all timer, and it's too important. I think maybe if it had been like, I don't know, against Iowa State or something, if it had been uh, yeah, what was another, if it had been against Kansas, if it had been,
Mm.
that was the, because Quentin Johnston's catch in the back of the end zone against Kansas, that's one of the moments of the year,
You could
to
put
be able
that
to,
on the poll too. Yep.
yeah, to be able to beat Kansas. And but because it's Kansas and it was earlier in the season and all of that, it doesn't get that. But because it's Baylor, it's in Waco, it's Baylor trying to get that revenge for TCU taking its playoff chance the year prior with Shadrack Banks' interception. Um, I think it felt like that was the, all right, this is destiny now. You can't take this from us now. We're running this thing all the way, because TCU had every reason to have lost that game in Waco. I mean, that the injuries that had piled up, Kendre Miller, Quentin Johnston, um, the environment, the game was just, it should have been a loss. There's no reason for TCU to have won that game and to be able to come away with that drive and then that play. It's just an impossible play. Nobody gets that right. I just, yeah, the Quentin Johnston play, the pure, I can watch that replay anytime it shows up on the Twitter feed. The Quentin Johnston play, I'll watch it over and over and over. I'll watch it 10 times and I'll get the goosebumps every time. And I agree that it's an all-time goosebumps play, but the moment of the year was the Griffin Kell kick. um I think that's my position on it. Maybe I'm being overly strong on it. I think it probably would have been closer. It probably would have been like 65% instead of 83%, something like that. The thing that surprises me the most here is how little love Jacoby Cole's game winning shot
Hmm.
received. I mean, 1.8%. We're talking about he hit a shot in the final seconds to win an NCAA tournament game in March Madness. I mean, 3 years ago, that was like impossible to
Mm.
imagine TCU winning that would have been one of the greatest moments in the history of TCU, and for it to kind of get buried here, I was pretty shocked to see that, and maybe I'm just a little more basketball focused than much of the readership at Frogs of War, but to me that was like that was an amazing moment, and comes at a huge time, and TCU ends up winning that game, and maybe because the season didn't end up in the Final Four or something, it doesn't feel like it means as much. But uh, to me, that's an incredible play to not be getting the kind of love that I think it deserves here.
Yeah, I think if some folks were wondering if you were to replace one of these four with the Quentin Johnston catch, I was kind of thinking we would replace the Elijah Nunez robbed home run, but that one got 2.5%, which still isn't a lot, but more than the Jacoby Coles play. And yeah, I agree. I mean, how often has TCU been to the NCAA men's basketball tournament in the last 10 years? You know, three times, and you have a play where TCU's kind of clawing its way back into the game after Arizona State took the momentum, and the Frogs go on a run over the last few minutes, and Jacoby Coles has he's not the player that you would expect in that situation, I think, to take that kind of shot. You know, in that similar to the way he's able to knock down free throws for TCU at the end of a game, you're thinking, Mike Miles Jr. is going to take the last shot, or Damian Baugh is going to take the last shot. Maybe Chuck O'Bannon will take the last shot because he made a game winner, I believe, against Baylor earlier in the
Mm-hmm.
year. But for Jacoby Coles to be the guy that takes the ball and puts up that shot at the end of the game, I feel like that's a moment in and of itself that you have, and that's kind of a play I feel it embodies his growth and how much better he got as the year went on. That he had the confidence to put the ball on the floor and not just stand in one spot on the floor in that in spot and say I'm gonna take the ball, I'm gonna put it on the floor, and I'm gonna put up a shot confidently with the stakes of being in a nationally televised environment. So, yeah, I agree with you. I wish that play would have gotten a little more love.
All right. We'll move on to the next one is TCU International Athletes of the Year. Um, this is a fun one to put together because TCU does bring top tier athletes from all over the globe. Some of these recruiting trips, I have to imagine, are pretty interesting to try to go find these elite athletes from all over the world. I did see at the Cam Norrie match in Wimbledon. I think I caught a glimpse of David Roditi out there, decked in full purple. He was there. They showed him along with Cam's coaches himself. Also, they all wear TCU stuff. But I think it's nice to see Roditi's out there. He can get his recruiting on out there, and our first. List here for International Athlete of the Year is from men's tennis, Jake Fernley from Scotland and Luke Famba. Some of these, it was hard to split them apart. I don't think you could have picked one of either Fernley or Famba, so had to kind of keep them together here for the voting. And they certainly worked as a team together. They played doubles together, and they were all Big 12, all American level performers, each in their own right, and then also together in doubles. as they led the TCU men's tennis team to the NCAA semifinals. Also on our voting list next was beach volleyball's Daniela Alvarez and Tanya Moreno, they were the national player of the year, or pair of the year, and conference pair of the year, as TCU won a conference championship and reached the NCAA semifinal. Then David Ekdahl from Sweden, from the diving team, set all kinds of TCU records, is definitely set up for a big career going forward. Then Emmanuel Miller from Canada. It's maybe cheating a little bit
Hmm.
to say Canada is international, but it is, and he's played a lot around the U.S. circuit, but he is from Ontario, Canada. So we included him here, and he was victorious in this with 56.7% of the vote, beating out Fernley and Famba in second place with 29.3%. Russ, what was your thought on the international flavor here for the Horned Frogs?
Yeah, this was a pretty obvious one. Part of me feels like it would have been interesting to remove Emmanuel Miller from the equation and put another athlete in there from maybe the women's tennis team or one of the two golf teams to see who would ultimately pull it out. But Emmanuel Miller being from Canada, it is international, and he he's going to be in a really good spot this coming year to be you look at how he played this past year and the year before that being, not necessarily a go-to guy, having to play alongside Mike Miles and Damian Baugh. He's going to be a featured guy, I think, for TCU this coming season. So I know a lot of Frog fans are excited about having him back for one more go around, and um, we'll see what he can do for TCU next year. It's going to be really exciting to see how he handles a potential increase in his workload, and we'll get an opportunity to see how far he can take his game next year. So excited to see that.
Yeah, and I think I probably would have voted for Alvarez and Moreno here, just in that the way, and I think they were potentially candidates for most valuable frog. The TCU beach volleyball team had an incredible regular season where they had just one regular season loss out of like 30 plus matches, and then they win their conference tournament and make a run to the NCAA tournament semifinal, where Alvarez and Moreno are the top pair, and they're facing the best of whatever anybody from the opponent has to throw at them, and almost every time, I had their stats somewhere, but I think they lost like once or twice all season, um, to drop a point. It's wild. They are an incredible pair together, and really one of the best that TCU has to offer. So glad to see they got 9.4% of the vote. But like you say, Emmanuel Miller was likely to win this. He's a famous name on a big time team, and well deserved, as he's a big time player as well. And in speaking of the beach volleyball team, we can move on to the next question: is the non-revenue program of the year. So certainly the revenue sports of football and men's basketball and baseball receive much of the coverage, and that's certainly what most people follow. But as TCU has been advertising, and as we all like to say, TCU is the everything school, and has major elite programs in the non-revenue sports as well. So the candidates here were Rifle, who ended up as the NCAA national runner-up with all kinds of records, like we talked about earlier. Men's tennis, NCAA semifinalists, Big 12 tournament champions. Incredible season. Indoor national champions. Next was equestrian, made it also to the national semifinals, and then beach volleyball, like I just mentioned, the national semifinals. Russ, what's your thoughts? Everyone is so good. This is a really tough choice. I was surprised that the voting kind of split so widely, but I think uh, I would have a tough time picking between all of these programs.
I was happy to see Rifle get 15%. I was a little intrigued to see between Rifle and Equestrian which team would get more votes. So the Rifle team getting 15%, a little over 500 votes in this poll, so a relatively healthy number compared to some of our other polls. I was happy to see that. The Rifle team, as I mentioned before, doesn't compete all that often and doesn't get a whole lot of coverage on social media or anywhere else. So those girls have been putting in work for several years now. The program has been arguably the best in the country for really the last decade. So um, cool, happy to see them get 15% there. And men's tennis, I would have voted for men's tennis just because of the ITA national championship run, being able to win the Big 12 tournament, making a run to the national championship. So many great players, and a lot of those guys are coming back. So this team has a chance to get right back where it left off this year. So that's got to be really exciting for Frog fans. And beach volleyball, 37-3, moving into a new conference here in the near future, going from the CCSA to the Conference USA. I think there's going to be a lot more beach volleyball action coming to Fort Worth. I think that might be part of the reason why they're moving conferences to maybe have some more events on the sand in Fort Worth, just outside of the rec center there. So if y'all haven't caught a beach volleyball match and you're in the area, go check it out because it's a lot of fun to watch. It's an entirely different sport from indoor volleyball. The way it's played, the amount of skill that's required, all of the physical, it's a extremely demanding sport. Um, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So if you're in Fort Worth and the season's coming around, go check out a beach volleyball match. It's worth it.
Yeah, and I say it all the time about tennis as well. Those two sports, it's free to attend. There's really no reason not to go. You have to go check it out. It's definitely worth your time, and they put on a good show, and it's entertaining, and they deserve your support. As does women's tennis as well. The one that I would say is the honorable mention here that I suppose would be considered a non-rev sport would be the soccer team, the women's soccer. They those games are all broadcast on ESPN Plus, and they do sell season tickets, and it is certainly not free to attend those games. So I don't know if that really qualifies as a non-rev program, but it doesn't get the attention that the big three get, and I think it deserves a lot of look. I mean, their season ended quite a long time ago, so that's probably out of everyone's mind now, as we're now about, I don't know, 5-6 weeks from their season starting here for 2023. But just a really strong program that put on a great run and had another incredible season and should be in for big things ahead. All right. Our final question on this poll was the TCU Assistant Coach of the Year, which included Ryan Higginbotham from that soccer team, as I just mentioned. So, along with football's offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, TCU baseball's coach coming in fresh from his former head coaching job, TJ Bruce, and then volleyball's Kyle Luongo. Garrett Riley did end up winning this one with nearly 58% of the vote, beating out TJ Bruce in second with just under 29%. Russ, as I lose my voice here, can you tell me what your thoughts are on the assistant coaches? I mean, Garrett Riley is dearly departed from the Horned Frogs as he heads his way over to the Clemson Tigers, but the TCU offense took certainly a big step forward, and I suppose he has some piece in that, as does in addition to Sonny Dykes. So probably a solid, deserving winner of this Frogs Award.
Yeah, and it's interesting to compare this poll to the Coach of the Year, where Sonny Dykes, I think, what do we say, 85,
Hmm.
86%. And um, the other head coaches in that poll were very deserving and accomplished in their own right. And then you look at this poll. I was a little surprised that Garrett Riley didn't run. Maybe it's because he's not employed by TCU anymore. Maybe if he was still around, he might have had a larger percentage of the vote there. But TJ Bruce, I think the way the Frogs turned their season around, I know there was a pretty fair amount of attention given to him on most broadcasts in the way that he kind of coached up the offense, and some of the plays that they would call during games were credited to him. So I think him getting about 30%. TJ Bruce has been a really valuable addition to the coaching staff, and I think his role is only going to grow moving forward. And then Kyle Luongo, he's been with the indoor volleyball program for a few years now, and um, I feel like when you have a program that's getting turned around, real quickly over the course of 12 months, he definitely plays a part in that along with Jason Williams. So uh, trying to plug indoor volleyball again and be ready on Frogs of War following us here as we get ready for the fall season. We're going to have some volleyball content coming along. So I am declaring myself the resident indoor volleyball fan for us moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. I try to keep up with everything. I am like all in on the soccer team. I'm all in on tennis and beach volleyball. But yeah, indoor volleyball. It hasn't. I haven't been able to get out there to any of the matches yet. I haven't been able to really dive into it. So I'm glad you're on it, and it's the blind spot that I need to take a closer look going into next season. And I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to all the coverage we'll have on it going into next season and through the season. All right, that ends it for our Frogs Awards. We're at nearly an hour here, so we'll probably just wrap it up. But want to hit on a few quick things of news from the week. Mentioned briefly, Cam Norrie, the former TCU Horned Frog, is competing in Wimbledon. He in Wimbledon singles. He had his first match earlier this week and had a win over number 108 ranked Thomas Macic. And it ended up a 4 sets. He needed 4 sets to get through it. It was maybe a little bit more of a struggle than he would have liked in the opening round for him being the number 12 overall seed, but comes away with the win and will face off with an American in round two, the 43rd ranked Christopher Eubanks, who just won earlier today here on Wednesday. Um, and it's one of those. Very rarely do you have any players who are played, NCAA, U.S. tennis play in these, become professional tennis stars and reach certainly Grand Slam level. So for Norrie from TCU, and then Eubanks attended Georgia Tech to be representing that college tennis, the strength of college tennis. It'll be exciting to see when they face off in the second round later this week. Also scheduled to start on it originally scheduled to start today, Wednesday, but now scheduled to start Thursday. There's been a lot of weather out there in London, so there's been a lot of delays. But Jake Fernley will actually be making his Grand Slam debut as well here. He's competing in doubles with Johannes Monday from the University of Tennessee. So they've been paired up and they've been playing well in the lead up to Wimbledon and earned a spot through qualifying and through their earlier performances. In their first round matchup is going to be a tough one against Andre Goranson and Ben McLaughlin. They are both ranked in the top 75. Obviously, Fernley and Monday are in the like sub 200s, sub 300s. So will be a challenge. Will be very interesting just to get that experience under his belt, and you never really uh, can turn down an opportunity to compete in a Grand Slam. So congratulations to him for even getting to this point, and excited to see what comes up next for him. Anything on the tennis, Russ?
Now, that's my blind spot. Like yours is volleyball, so I'm leaning on you for all the tennis insight. I'll try to. I think they've had it on at the gym when I've been going over in the morning. They've had some matches being played, so I'll keep my eyes peeled for our boy Cam. I know he's had a really solid stretch here over this last year or so, playing well in some of these non-major events. So, hoping to see him make a deep run here, and well, we'll see what our boy can do out there in London.
Yeah, last season he reached the semifinal of Wimbledon, and he hasn't really gotten to that level of success since then. So hopefully here back, maybe in front of some royalty, he'll show out again. Next big piece of news. Speaking of royalty, we've got some financial royalty here. Desmond Bane signs a massive max deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. Long-term contract here, 5 years, $207 million. Um, Locks up the former Horned Frog shooting guard long-term in Memphis. Very excited for this as a Tennessean. Uh, it's great to see Desmond Bane will continue to represent TCU very well there, and hopefully his teammates can refrain from putting up any firearms in Instagram videos in the future, and they can have a deep run into the playoffs through next year. So just an incredible rise for Desmond Bane. I mean, we kind of talk about the story of Max Duggan and some of these guys at TCU, and Desmond Bane is absolutely in that same kind of mold of he came in to TCU with little praise and little fanfare, and he really showed out from the start. He was on that team that won the NIT way back in 2017. That was his freshman year at TCU, and he became a big time contributor throughout his career, and just really proud of him, and excited for what he's going to continue to do going forward in his NBA career. And um, we got a pretty good question on Twitter about where does this stack up and compare to other Horned Frogs career earnings, and is this the largest contract that a former Frog has ever signed? And the answer is yes, by quite a large margin. Desmond Bane is now picking up the check at every Horned Frog Letterman's Club meeting. He has, so yeah, his contract for 207 million, comparing to Andy Dalton's career earnings of 101 million so far through 12 seasons. Jake Arrieta, 102 million in his 12 seasons in Major League Baseball. Matt Carpenter's 86 million in 13 seasons in baseball. And I think tellingly, LaDainian Tomlinson played 9 seasons with the Chargers. He's an all-time great Horned Frog, an all-time great NFL player, NFL Hall of Famer, all-time great LA Charger. His career with the Chargers, he earned $53 million from his contracts total. Desmond Bane in the final year of this contract will earn $47 million. So 1 year of Desmond Bane nearly pays for 9 seasons of LaDainian Tomlinson, which is pretty crazy. Obviously, it's different sports, many years separated, but congratulations to Desmond Bane.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how much money is flying around in the NBA right now with some of these 250, $260 million max contracts for these rookies and these all-star players. But Desmond Bane has been a guy who has come in and gotten better and better and better with every season. And it's cool to think about how far he's come because he's a player that could have left TCU. He could have transferred. He could have, declared for the draft when maybe he wasn't ready. There were quite a few players, I think, back around that time, 2018, 2019, where the program was kind of in a state of flux and a lot of players were transferring out. I want to say close to the entire roster transferred out, except for Desmond Bane and maybe one or two others that opted to stay. And it was rewarding in the sense that he came back and had a tremendous final season of college basketball and then worked his way to being a first round pick and has come in and shot the ball. You look at his numbers going back to his rookie season, he has been a elite shooter since he stepped onto an NBA floor. And his scoring, he went from averaging just over 8 points as a rookie to 15 points to now over 20 points a game. And he's going to need to shoulder the load a little bit, as you mentioned, with Ja Morant messing around on Instagram, catching a 25 game suspension. Desmond Bane's going to have to carry the scoring load along with Jaren Jackson, and you could see Desmond Bane perhaps having a career season coming up
Hmm.
here next winter. So congratulations to Desmond Bane. Of course, a lot of fun to watch him play at TCU. It's been fun to watch him in the NBA, and yeah, it's crazy to think about some of these TCU the hashtag pro frogs that have been doing this for over a decade now that have made a great deal of cash, and it doesn't even come close to what this contract is gonna. And it's all guaranteed in the NBA. So I'm sure the TCU Alumni Association and Jeremiah Donati and uh, his crew has probably hit him up already to maybe secure a little guap for what's coming on the
Yes.
TCU
Yeah,
campus. So
the Desmond Bane court at Schollmeyer Arena coming soon.
yeah, if they need another 10 million for the strength and performance
Yeah,
facility
why not?
improvements that are coming, hit our boy up. I'm sure he's gonna have some dough to blow. So why not?
Yeah, and a couple of former Horned Frogs who hope to reach that point coming soon as undrafted rookies, Damian Ball and Mike Miles begin their NBA Summer League journey. And Damian Ball had his first game, his NBA debut with the Los Angeles Lakers, scoring 4 points. He had also added 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal in a loss to the Miami Heat earlier this week. Uh, NBA Summer League is tricky. The basketball is not very good. They like wear what look like knockoff jerseys. I don't know. It
Yeah,
looks like they're
they're
playing
like
at the
practice
YMCA.
jerseys. Yeah,
It's yeah, they're wearing practice jerseys. They look like you tried to create a team in 2K and just stopped as soon as you started. You're using like default colors, and I don't know. It looks it's not very good television, and so it's hard to really gauge how these guys are performing. But Ball got a lot of run. I think he played maybe 24 minutes or so in that game, and did score and was doing Damian Ball things, passing the ball around. He had several hockey assists, I guess, where he creates the pass that leads to the pass that leads to the score, which is something that won't show up in the scorebook, obviously, but is the kind of thing that is what winning players do. So I hope to see more of Damian Ball going forward, and I think it'll be a big challenge for him to make an NBA roster, but he's certainly putting his best foot forward. Mike Miles Jr.'s debut will be coming up in the Las Vegas portion of the Summer League, which starts this weekend, and his first game is Saturday against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So we'll get to see him out there. Maybe he runs around Chet Holmgren's lanky self and get some layups in there. Excited to see. There's been a lot of good positive talk about Mike Miles through all this kind of lead up into Summer League. A lot of it feels like he's a lot closer to making the NBA roster perhaps than Damian Ball is, just based on the chatter. But it might just be that that's because he's here local and it's an interesting story. So looking forward to him as well.
yeah. Mike Miles being on a two-way contract, he's probably going to get some real NBA run at some point, just knowing that he's going to be a player that they can shuttle back and forth between the NBA team and the G League team. Whereas Damian Baugh, we talked about it last week, signed an Exhibit 10 deal, which is a contract where you're with the team through summer league, and it's it can be a two-way contract if it's converted before the season starts. Otherwise, you're probably not going to make the roster, and then you'll maybe be signed back to a G League contract. Or the other nice thing about Summer League is some of these players may not be uh, on the NBA roster with the team they're playing for, but they could get a look from another team that's watching and say, we want to bring this guy in on a G League contract or a, a vet minimum deal or whatever. So I also think going into the Las Vegas portion of the summer league, that's where the environment will kick up a little bit. I believe they play that at UNLV, so
Hmm.
the stadium is bigger, more fans will be there. It's not like some of these like in Orlando, it's very much a open gym environment, whereas the Las Vegas Summer League has the most teams. I believe they play for an actual Summer League
Hmm.
championship. So it'll be a lot more competitive, and hopefully we'll see some better basketball being played there.
And in the latest football news, we'll move on to that. We've got four TCU Horned Frogs earned preseason All Big 12 honors. Interestingly, zero on the offensive side, but three on the defense, which leads the conference for defenders, and one specialist with Griffin Kell, the kicker, and then Dominic Williams, Josh Newton, and Johnny Hodges. We talked a bunch about all four of those guys earlier in this podcast, but um, interesting to compare that to last season where TCU only had two members on the squad, with four fewer teams in the league, and TCU only had two members, which was Quentin Johnston and Travius Hodges Tomlinson last year going into last season. So obviously preseason awards don't really mean much, and it's voted on by the media, and it's very much who do you know of. So a lot of times whoever's most famous ends up getting voted in, and certainly TCU coming off the magical season, a lot of names in people's minds as they go to fill out their ballots here, but certainly expect big things from all four of these guys, and expect to see maybe some different names show up at the end of the season when the final awards are announced, and hope to see some offensive players out there, particularly offensive linemen. Russ, did you think there were any snubs here that maybe the media is sleeping on the Horned Frogs a little bit?
I thought we talked about it briefly before the podcast. Bud Clark is someone that I feel like is a worthy addition to that list. Maybe the conference is just very deep in the secondary this year, and there are some senior, redshirt senior type players coming back. Bud Clark is still somewhat young. I think he's going to be a redshirt junior, I think, this coming year. So maybe there are some, players coming back with some seniority in the secondary, but I would say that's the only one on the defensive side. Offensively, I feel like you still have a lot of players. You look at some of these transfers like J.P. Richardson and JoJo Earl, they're going to have to prove that they can step in and be contributors right away. Trey Sanders, same thing, running back coming in from Alabama. And you have some returning guys like Savion Williams, for example, or Chandler Morris that I think have shown they have the talent, but the track record is just not really built up yet. So from those skill positions, I wasn't too surprised to see that there weren't any frogs on the All Big 12 list. And then on the offensive line, I think there's an argument that you could have either Brandon Coleman or Andrew Coker on that list. Both have been starters for the last few years. Brandon Coleman's been super versatile. He started at guard, he started at left tackle. Andrew Coker, I believe, is going to be a redshirt senior this coming year. So those are two guys that are going to have huge roles for this offensive line that is losing an All-American caliber player in Steve Avila, losing a first-team All-Big 12 center in Alana Lee, and then losing a 6-year player in Wes Harris. So there's going to be a lot on the shoulders of those two guys, Brandon Coleman and Andrew Coker. I wouldn't be surprised if those names are on the All Big 12 team to some degree when the season's over.
Yeah, I think Jamoy Hodge probably could have gotten a look at linebacker. Just he had a pretty productive season and is coming back and would have every expectation that he's very, very productive in this coming season. I don't know that that's a snub, but that's probably a name to at least consider when voting. And then, uh, I think Jared Wiley at tight end might have had a shot. Jatavian Sanders from Texas is who was voted as the tight end, and I guess I get it. I think that's one of those that's definitely still cruising on his name and that people know him. He was a big time recruit. His recruiting pedigree, he's still kind of cruising on that a little bit. I don't know that his performance on the field in the Big 12 has shown that level of play yet. I mean, his tape shows a lot of drops at a lot of whiffs on blocks. So I think he has no question all of the talent to go and be the top tight end in the Big 12. But I think you could have probably pulled somebody, the guy from Kansas. Austin Stogner is back at Oklahoma, and then Jared Wiley as well. I think could have all gotten looks, and I think Sanders kind of just wins it just on name value alone. All right, the last little piece of news that just came through today, right before we hit record, was that TCU added another big member of its team to the baseball team. Adds a infielder, Ole Miss second baseman Peyton Chatagnier. Chatagnier. Um, he's obviously they won the national championship a couple seasons ago, and he was a starter on that team. He's been a starter for a few seasons there in the SEC, coming off a season where he started over 50 games in the infield for Ole Miss. So he comes in and potentially brings some depth, potentially, depending on how the major league draft goes at the end of this week, comes into a potential starting role. But it's a good addition to a squad that now has 5 transfers in this class, a couple of pitchers, a two-way hitter, and a third baseman. So interested to see what he'll bring. I haven't dug into his stats or anything yet, as this news just came through. But I think TCU continues to be a destination for people in the baseball transfer portal as well.
Yeah, 4-year player at Ole Miss, hit 311 as a freshman in 2020, which was obviously the season that was cut short due to COVID, but has started 183 games over his 4 years at Ole Miss. So this is a guy that's been an everyday player. He's been exclusively a second baseman over the last 3 years. So you have to wonder, is this a guy who's going to come in and be a depth piece or maybe compete for a spot at another position? Or could this mean something about Trey Richardson's future and uh, possibly leaving to pursue a career in the minors, after being taken in the MLB draft, which is going to be coming up here, I think in about a week or so. We'll have the 2023 MLB draft coming
Yeah,
up,
it
and
starts Sunday. Mm-hmm.
there will be multiple Horned Frogs called in this draft, and then some of these guys will have decisions to make. Guys like Trey Richardson and Cole Fontenelle and Garrett Wright and Luke Savage and others that are coming off strong seasons. So pretty respectable numbers from this Ole Miss second baseman. Hit 261 this past year, had 10 home runs, 26 RBIs, a 483 slugging percentage. He's had at least 10 home runs over each of his last 2 years. So has played a lot. He's got respectable numbers at the plate. So at the very least, it's a depth piece on the infield, which I really don't know how much of that TCU has when you consider that it was essentially Braden Taylor, Anthony Silva, Trey Richardson, and Cole Fontenelle across the diamond for, gosh, probably the entire second half of the season. So
Mm-hmm.
um, perhaps adding some depth or creating some competition for playing time this coming year, but definitely a veteran player, a lot of experience, 186 total games, and going to be coming in looking to make an impact right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have gone extra long here, so we appreciate all of you sticking with us and hope you've enjoyed this episode. It was fun to look back at all of the wonderful achievements of the past year, and we're really ready to look forward to the fall season and all of the excitement it is sure to bring in all of the sports as we get into it. And so, yeah, appreciate everyone reading all of our work at frogsaward.com and listening to us here on the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate all of you. And with that, go Frogs.
Go Frogs.